Hello again, everybody, and God be with you. Well, this week's story from the Easter story is about a couple of guys who we don't have a name for. The story's called The Robber's Tale, and this is how Bob introduces it. Some people say that your whole life flashes before your eyes just before you die. I don't know if that's true or not, because I've never faced that situation. But what if it were true? And what if you had the chance to write it down or tell it to someone? Then it might sound something like the story I'm about to read. It wasn't my fault. Not really. My brother was older than me. You know how it is. You look up to your brother, especially when you're little, and you want to do what he does. Well, my brother was a thief. And even though he was only 11 or 12 when he started, he got good fast. He had this innocent face for a start, round chubby cheeks that old ladies just loved to pinch. So they trusted him. He was quick too. He could snatch a coin off a table so fast that it looked like his hand had never moved at all. And best of all, he could talk. Boy, could he talk. One story after another. Lie after lie after lie. And all the time with that smile on his face. My brother could talk his way out of anything. Once, and I had nothing to do with this, I swear, he stole this chicken from old Simeon's wife. And not just any chicken, of course, but her favourite chicken, the one with the big brown spot on its back. So there he was, running down the street with his chicken tucked under his arm, when who should come bustling out of a door in front of us but the old lady herself. Now, Simeon's wife was the chief cheek pincher in our village. So when she saw my big brother right there in front of her, she threw wide her huge arms and, like some enormous lobster, began to flex those fat pinching fingers. Escape? Escape was out of the question, for Simeon's wife was also the widest woman in town. We tried to avoid her, we really did, but our speed and her bulk resulted in one huge collision, and my brother and I found ourselves sitting dazed on our backsides before her. Now, where are you boys off to in such a hurry? She grinned, pinching his cheeks, and then mine for good measure. But before either of us could say a thing, she spotted her spotty hen. The big woman's smile turned down into a frown. But before it could fall into a fully fledged scowl, my brother blurted out, "We were bringing your chicken back to you. That's why we were in such a hurry. We found it in Anna's yard. That's right. And we thought maybe it had wandered there, or, God forbid, that old Anna had stolen your chicken. Anyway, we watched her, and when she went into her house, we grabbed it as fast as we could and ran and, why, here, it's all yours again." Simeon's wife just looked at my brother, and then slowly her frown turned into a puzzled stare. "But Anna," she pondered, "why would Anna want to take my chicken?" "Jealousy," my brother jumped back in, eager to save his story. "That has to be it. After all, it's not everyone who has a chicken that looks like that." "That's true," the old woman nodded, and then she leaned nearer and whispered, "And I'm sure you're too young to know this, but they say that Anna has always fancied my Simeon, the most handsome man in the village, if I say so myself." So she bought the story, and instead of smacking us round the head or dragging us off to the local judge, she pinched our cheeks one more time and rewarded us each with a shiny silver coin. My brother grinned and strutted as we made our way back home, but I was still a little worried. "What if she talks to Anna?" I said. "Oh, I don't think that's going to happen," he chuckled as he pulled a piece of woven cloth out from under his shirt. "I grabbed this out of the old lady's basket," he laughed. "Between all the pinching and hugging, it's her own special pattern. And when it gets dark, I know just what we're going to do with it." But it's the Sabbath, I said. That's right, he grinned again. Everybody will be at home praying and reading and stuff, and everybody but you and me. And so later that night, we crept out of our house and across the village and into Anna's yard. And while I watched, my brother quietly wrung the neck of every chicken in her yard. Did I mention that he could be vicious as well? And left that piece of cloth behind as evidence. There was a lot of commotion in the village the next morning, questions and rumours and accusations. And I understand that the two women never talked to one another again. As for my brother, he just got better and better at his chosen profession. Pickpocketing, sheep stealing, breaking and entering. There wasn't anything he couldn't do. And soon we built up a little gang. Well, he did actually, because, as I said, I never did any of the real stealing. I was a lookout mostly, just along for the ride. We started moving from place to place. We hit the villages first because they were the easiest. But as folks started to recognise us, we had to aim for the larger towns and then the cities. Get lost in the crowds. You know what I mean. Crowds can be a great cover, actually. That's what my brother always said. All those people bunched together, jostling, bumping, pushing. And if a hand should slip into a pocket, a pouch, or a purse, who would notice? Markets are good, public executions aren't bad, but nothing beats a good old-fashioned religious festival. Nobody's on their guard, you see. They're all feeling good and holy, and they walk around with the mistaken notion that everyone else is feeling good and holy too. There was this time, for example, up in Galilee, near the sea, when all these people were listening to this teacher. His name was Jesus, and he was another one of those Messiah wannabes. You know, follow me and I will lead you to God. That sort of thing. Anyway, we were doing pretty well. The crowd couldn't keep its eyes off him, which meant, of course, they weren't paying attention to us at all. He was telling this story about a guy who gets fed up with his dad, runs off with his inheritance and gambles it all away, or something like that. When the money's all gone, this guy drags himself back home again. You know what the father's going to do? Smack him round the head, like Simeon's wife should have done to us. But no, the father rewards him, gives him rings and robes and a fancy feast. I have to admit, it was the most unlikely story I'd ever heard. So I glanced over at my brother to get his reaction, and he was fuming. I thought for a moment that he was angry with me for listening to the story instead of, well, attending to business. But it was the teacher. That's who had him so worked up. Now there's a thief, he muttered. He doesn't work, I can promise you that. But somebody's feeding him and taking care of him. He fills their heads with lies and they love him for it. Oof, let's get out of here. And so, even though there were hundreds of purses left to pinch, we headed across the hills and into the nearest town. A couple of years went by. I was about 18 or 19 by then, and we started to get a little cocky. Success does that to you. And the problem is that you start to get sloppy too. Soon, you start to believe that you can pull off anything, even stealing from the Romans. That was our big mistake. If we'd stuck to Jews and Samaritans and the odd caravan trader, we'd still be working today. But someone told my brother about all the treasure hidden away in this centurion's house down in Jerusalem. So he planned it. He broke in and he grabbed it. And as for his beating the centurion nearly to death, well, I can't say, can I? I was outside, the lookout, remember? Anyway, what we didn't know was that the old boy was retiring and that a bunch of soldiers had chosen that very night to surprise him with a party. So the surprise was on us. And surrounded, we surrendered. Well, what else could we do? My brother tried to talk his way out of it, but the Romans didn't really understand our language. So instead of a pinch on the cheek, all he got was a hard smack in the mouth. Then they dragged us off to jail. When he came to, my brother just sat there speechless. Not for hours, but for days. I never seen him so quiet. But each time I tried to say something, start up a conversation, lighten the mood, he growled at me, and I got the message. Finally, he spoke, but it wasn't what I expected him to say. Did you ever wish you could start all over again? I was a little confused. Oh, you mean like planning the robbery better, or staying away from Romans? No, he sighed. I mean life. Starting over again, getting another chance. Like the story that teacher told about the boy and his father. You remember? But I thought that was stupid. You thought it was stupid, I reminded him. Yeah, well, I guess I never thought I'd need a second chance. I was always so good in talking my way out of things. But now, now that it's all over, I guess I feel different. What do you mean, all over? I asked. We're getting out of here, right? And that's when he gave me the look. The big brother to little brother look. The look that said he thought I was some kind of idiot. You don't get it, do you? He said. They're going to kill us. These are Romans we're talking about. They're going to drag us out of here, hang us on a cross, and crucify us. But why? I asked. Why? I mean, I didn't do anything. I was just a lookout. You can tell them that, can't you? But my brother just sighed and shook his head and turned his face again, silent, to the wall. He was right, of course. Not 2 days later, they woke us up, tied us, each of us, to a cross, and before the sun came up, there we were, just hanging there, waiting to die. I screamed for a little while. It's not my fault, I pleaded. It's not fair. The soldiers just laughed, and the growing crowd didn't want to know. So after a while, I shut up. It's hard to breathe hanging like that, and harder still to talk. Maybe that's why my brother never said a word. Time passed. I don't know how much. And then a whole parade of people came marching up the hill. There was wailing and weeping on one side and cheering on the other. And then they raised a third cross up between us. I turned my head and looked at the guy. Oh, he was a mess. Cuts and bruises all over his body and blood pouring down his face. He must have done something awful, I thought. As bad as I felt, I was glad I wasn't in his shoes. Then I looked closer, and I couldn't believe what I saw. It was Jesus. Oh, the teacher we saw up in Galilee. I tried to get my brother's attention, but no, he wouldn't even look my way. So I thought, why not try to win a little respect from him? Cheer him up, maybe, right at the end. Show him that I'm not the idiot brother he always thought I was. So I turned to this Jesus and I said, Hey, they say you're the Messiah, right? God's special guy. Well, if you're such a big shot, why don't you do something about this? Why don't you snap your fingers or say the magic word and get us all out of this mess? It was good. I thought, funny, So I glanced at my brother just to get his reaction. And I couldn't believe it. He was giving me that idiot look again. What is wrong with you? He sighed. We're all going to die here. Aren't you afraid of that? And aren't you even more afraid of what God and what he'll do to us? I mean, we're here because we deserve it. We've been thieves all our lives. But look at this man. Look at him. He's done nothing wrong. Not a thing. And then he turned to the teacher. And I don't know, maybe it was just sweat, but I'd swear there were tears in my brother's eyes. And that's when he said it. Jesus, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? And Jesus nodded. And Jesus forced a little smile. And Jesus said, yes, today truly you will be with me in paradise. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I suppose I should have said something too. But hey, what for? It was my brother. My brother who was the bad guy. My brother who was the thief. I was just the lookout. Honest. Never did anything wrong. Not really. Like I said at the beginning, it wasn't my fault. When I started reading that story, I thought that the man telling the story was going to be the one who asked for forgiveness. But no, I got it wrong. The guy telling the story was the one who didn't acknowledge his own guilt. His big brother did in the end. At long last, he had a second chance. And I think that's one of the things that keeps my faith going ever so strongly. In the meantime, have a good week, keep well, and there'll be another Easter story next week. In the end, God bless you all.